Hi everyone, I'm Claudine and I'll be presenting on week 5, question A. Describe a case study where risk perception had a significant influence on the outcome of environmental management. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Harding and others define risk as the most quantifiable and measurable type of uncertainty. And Bayland points out that importantly, individual values are inevitably tied up in risk evaluation. In the following case study, however, we will see that values are not always consistently applied. Risk perception refers to the gap between the general public and expert sources' assessment of the same risk. The different factors that influence a layperson's perception of the risk are examined and can be classified according to various frameworks. Studies into risk perception have found that lay people often significantly over or underestimate risk. 2 studies in the EU found that many smokers were more worried about the risks associated with mad cow disease than with smoking, even though experts assert smoking was the much greater health risk. A number of relevant psychological factors contribute to an individual's perception of risk. These include the perceived costs and benefits associated with the risk, other pressing concerns like financial problems, who is presenting the information associated with the risk, and how it's presented. These factors are pertinent in the microbeads case study, which is an example of both positive and negative implications for the environment. The banning of products with microbeads in the US is good news for the ocean. However, the ban doesn't extend to microplastics in general or microfibers. The first published study of microbeads as an environmental hazard was in 1991, yet widespread campaigns to ban them didn't emerge until 2011 or 2012, alongside prominent campaigns related to marine litter. The US introduced a law banning products containing microbeads effective as of July 2017. In Australia, big-name cosmetic companies have agreed to a voluntary phase-out. However, this measure is considered to have failed to achieve the necessary cessation of use, and legislation to ban the products is currently under review by the federal government. Some point to the US ban as a triumph of environmentalism, pointing out the range of stakeholders involved in forming the legislation, including state and federal governments, NGOs, and the plastics industry. In this sense, the ban is an example of a wicked solution, with multiple stakeholders and regulations at work. Microbeads are tiny beads found in cosmetic products like facial exfoliants, scrubs, and some toothpaste. They're usually made from polyethylene or polypropylene, though a lack of an exhaustive and definitive list of ingredients is a problem and has allowed some manufacturers to continue to use them under different names. Microbeads are an environmental hazard because they are too small to be filtered through the usual sewage treatment systems and end up directly in the oceans. Their chemical composition means they attract and store toxins effectively, which can then be ingested by marine life, which may then be eaten by humans. Though science had pointed to the risk of microbeads in the 90s, hot cognition, fueled by emotive images of animals choking on plastics, must be part of the success of the campaign to ban the bead, as public sympathy for campaigns involving animals is a known phenomenon. Access to social and other media was also instrumental. Microfibers are tiny particles of synthetic material, usually nylon, that are washed into the oceans via our plumbing and sewage systems. Studies have found similar bioaccumulation of these fibers in marine life as that of microbeads. I could not find any worldwide cases of an efficient means of addressing this in my research. So what are the reasons for the apparent inconsistent risk perception associated with microbeads versus microfibers and other microplastics, which present essentially the same hazards to marine life? Psychology, advertising, access to social media, and the degree of difficulty are all relevant. A major study on risk perception found that costs and benefits associated with the risk influence perception. If an activity is liked, people tend to judge its benefits as high and its risks as low. If the activity is disliked, the judgments are the opposite. Benefits tend to be perceived as low, while risks are perceived as high. Access to campaign advertising via social and other media has surely played a role in the microbead campaign, but that doesn't explain the lack of campaigning in relation to microfibres and plastics. O'Brien in 2003 found that the way the risk is framed and presented to the public influences their understanding. Further, ceasing to use cosmetic products containing the microbead is a relatively easy behavioural change to make, now that we know the risk to marine life. How to deal with plastic microfibres seeping into waterways from our washing is much more difficult. The cost outweighs the perceived risk. The extent to which the plastics or cosmetics industry producing microbeads knew about the environmental dangers prior to the Ban the Bead campaign is unclear. However, the case study demonstrates the dynamic and potential power of public risk perception. Industry has certainly seemed to be proactive. A cynical view of the plastic industry's positive response would likely highlight reputational risk as a driving factor. Psychology is again pertinent here. According to Balint and others, if participants trust the organisation presenting the risk information, they are more likely to accept the characterisation. We now face a case of the known unknown. We know that microplastics are reaching the ocean, but there isn't a large amount known about all the ramifications to ecosystems. Will we anticipate risk and take more action now, given the knowledge we do have? Thanks everyone, and see you on the discussion boards.